We admire heroes, those who rush into danger, save lives, and wear the uniform with pride. But what if that uniform hides something much darker? Today, we dive into real-life stories of so-called heroes who turned out to be serial killers. But what's even more shocking, the truth behind their actions might just surprise you. Stay with us until the end, because the final case is one you'll never forget. Let's start with the story of John Leonard Orr. Like so many others, it begins with a man who seemed to have it all: ambition, purpose, and a drive to help others. Orr was a firefighter, an arson investigator for the Glendale Fire Department, and someone society trusted. He wore the badge of heroism with pride, someone who fought fires and saved lives. But little did anyone know the man who wore the uniform was hiding a far darker truth. Orr's story doesn't begin with fire. It begins with ambition and the desire to serve. Born in 1949 in Los Angeles, Orr joined the U.S. Air Force on his 18th birthday. Initially assigned to jet mechanics school, he was soon transferred to firefighting school, a twist of fate that set him on a path he could never return from. After being honorably discharged at 21, he married his high school girlfriend Jody and tried to build a stable life. But his dreams didn't stop there. Despite being rejected by the Los Angeles Police Department after failing a psychological test, Orr didn't give up. He turned to the Los Angeles Fire Department only to have his offer rescinded. It felt like another setback. But in 1974, he was hired by the Glendale Fire Department, where his career truly began to take off. Orr quickly rose through the ranks, becoming a captain and, soon after, an arson investigator. It was in this role, where he was trusted to investigate and solve fires, that Orr found the perfect cover for his darkest desires. Orr's fascination with fire went beyond the professional realm. As an arson investigator, he was often the first on the scene, arriving before anyone else and taking charge of the situation. His expertise gave him insider knowledge of how fires behaved, and he began to exploit that knowledge for his own twisted purposes. Rather than simply solving fires, Orr started setting them. It wasn't just about the destruction, it was about control, about being both the villain and the hero. He would start fires and then return to the scene to solve them, receiving praise for his work while hiding his crimes. The fires grew bigger, the stakes grew higher, and as Orr's need for recognition and control grew, so did the death toll. What began as a few small fires escalated into massive blazes, resulting in loss of life. In December of 1984, Orr's deadly streak reached a breaking point. A fire broke out at a South Pasadena furniture store, killing 4 people, a mother and her 3 children. The fire was devastating, its intensity and spread unlike anything investigators had seen. But as they examined the evidence, they made a chilling discovery. Orr's fingerprints were found at the scene. It was the first real clue that the man who had been trusted to investigate these fires was, in fact, the one who had set them. The investigation revealed more than anyone could have expected. Orr wasn't just responsible for a single deadly blaze. He had set over 2,000 fires across Southern California. Many of them had resulted in destruction, property loss, and in some cases, death. But for years, Orr had hidden in plain sight, manipulating his position as an expert to continue his reign of terror undetected. As Orr's role in the South Pasadena fire came to light, investigators began to piece together the full extent of his crimes. His work as an arson investigator had provided him with a unique opportunity to set fires without suspicion. For nearly 2 decades, Orr had been living a double life, playing the part of the hero while secretly wreaking havoc. His thirst for recognition, control, and power had led him to destroy lives, both figuratively and literally. Orr was finally arrested in 1992. The investigation into the South Pasadena fire led to his conviction for murder and arson. By 1994, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His years of deception had finally caught up with him, and the truth about his actions was revealed for the world to see. But even as he sat behind bars, Orr's case continued to haunt those who had worked with him, who had trusted him, and who had never suspected the monster lurking beneath the surface. But just when you think Orr's reign of terror has ended, another hero's mask slips into darkness. This time, a trusted nurse, Charles Cullen. Charles Edmund Cullen was once viewed as a dedicated and competent nurse. He worked quietly in hospitals across New Jersey and Pennsylvania, earning the respect of both his colleagues and patients. On the surface, Cullen seemed like an ordinary man, someone you would trust with your care. But beneath the professional exterior, something far more sinister was lurking, something that would go undetected for years. Cullen was born on February 22, 1960, in West Orange, New Jersey, being the youngest of 8 children. His childhood was far from happy. His father passed away when Cullen was just 7 months old, and his mother died in a car accident when he was a teenager. Growing up, Cullen felt abandoned and neglected, left to navigate a tumultuous life with little support from his family. His siblings were much older and dealing with their own issues, and Cullen was left to face his demons alone. The emotional neglect and isolation led Cullen to struggle with depression, and by the time he reached his teenage years, he had already attempted suicide multiple times. In 1978, Cullen enlisted in the U.S. Navy, hoping for a fresh start and a sense of belonging. However, his time in the military did not provide the camaraderie he was looking for. In fact, Cullen became the target of bullying and harassment from his fellow servicemen. His awkwardness and inability to fit in made him an easy target for ridicule. His mental health continued to deteriorate, and his time in the Navy would only deepen his sense of isolation. After a series of suicide attempts and a bizarre incident where he was found dressed in surgical gear while sitting at the control panel for the submarine's nuclear missile system, Cullen was sent to a psychiatric evaluation. This led to his medical discharge in 1984. Once out of the Navy, Cullen returned to New Jersey, unsure of what to do next, but he eventually enrolled in nursing school at Mountainside Hospital in Montclair, New Jersey. For the first time in his life, Cullen seemed to find something that he was good at. He excelled in his studies and was even elected class president by his peers. In 1987, he graduated and began his career as a nurse at St. Barnabas Medical Center in Livingston, New Jersey. Cullen's personal life appeared to be on the upturn. He married Adrienne Baum, and they had children together, but his achievements only masked the deepening darkness within him. Cullen's past struggles and emotional scars never fully healed, and it wasn't long before his desire to help others would twist into something much more disturbing. By the time Cullen began working at St. Barnabas, he had already begun his killing spree. His first known victim was 78-year-old John Yengo Sr., a former municipal judge. Yengo was admitted to the hospital for an allergic reaction to a blood-thinning drug, but Cullen administered the medication that led to his death. At the time, Yengo's death was ruled an unfortunate accident, but for Cullen, this marked the beginning of a pattern that would continue for years. His method of killing was simple: poisoning patients with drugs like digoxin and insulin, which were commonly used in medical settings, but deadly when administered improperly. Cullen's victims were often elderly patients who were already at risk due to their age or pre-existing conditions, making it easier for him to go unnoticed. As Cullen continued to work in hospitals across New Jersey, his killing spree escalated. He moved from St. Barnabas to Warren Hospital in Phillipsburg, and later to Hunterdon Hospital in Flemington. At each hospital, Cullen continued his poisonings, and a growing number of deaths began to raise suspicion. However, Cullen managed to evade capture, moving from one hospital to another, always finding a way to slip through the system's cracks. His ability to manipulate the healthcare system allowed him to keep killing while maintaining a professional facade. And just when you think it couldn't get any worse, it does. In 1993, Cullen's personal life began to unravel. His wife, Adrienne, became increasingly suspicious of his behavior. She suspected he was poisoning people for fun and even believed that he had killed their neighbor's dog. Despite these concerns, Adrienne never fully understood the depth of Cullen's depravity. Eventually, the couple divorced, and Adrienne filed a restraining order against him, but Cullen's killing continued. After the divorce, Cullen moved to Pennsylvania, where he found work at Liberty Nursing and Rehabilitation Center and Lehigh Valley Hospital. At each new job, Cullen continued his spree, killing more patients and evading suspicion. In 2003, Cullen began working at Somerset Medical Center in Somerville, New Jersey, where his killing reached its peak. Between July and October of that year, Cullen murdered at least 5 patients. It was during this time that an investigation into the suspicious death of Reverend Florian Gall, a 68-year-old priest, led authorities to the chilling discovery. An autopsy revealed that Gall had abnormally high levels of digoxin in his system, and soon other suspicious deaths were traced back to Cullen as well. The investigation into his activities intensified, and in December 2003, he was arrested. During his interrogation, Cullen confessed to killing at least 30 to 40 people throughout his 16-year career as a nurse. Some estimates suggest the actual number of victims could be much higher, but Cullen's admissions were chilling nonetheless. He was charged with multiple murders and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Cullen, who had once been trusted to care for the sick, was revealed to be a cold-blooded killer, one who had used his position in the healthcare system to murder with impunity for years. And even after Cullen's case unravels, a new chapter begins, where another man hiding behind a badge turns into a deadly predator. Manuel Pardo seemed like an ordinary man, a dedicated Navy veteran and former police officer with a promising future. But behind his uniform, something far darker lurked. Born on September 24, 1956, in New York City, Pardo grew up in a working-class family. He joined the Boy Scouts and later enlisted in the Navy. After serving with pride, he returned home and joined the Florida Highway Patrol, graduating at the top of his class. He later worked for the Sweetwater Police Department in Miami-Dade County, but by 1981, cracks began to show. Pardo and 3 other officers were accused of police brutality. Though the case was dismissed, it marked the beginning of a downward spiral. His behavior became increasingly erratic, and scandals eventually led to his dismissal. Still, that wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a much darker path. In the mid-1980s, Pardo and his associate, Garcia, dove into drug dealing and murder. In their twisted minds, they weren't just eliminating rivals, they believed they were cleansing society. In January 1986, they murdered their first victims, Mario Amador and Robert Alonso. The plan was to buy drugs, but instead, they shot both men in the head and torso with a .22 caliber Ruger, stole the drugs, and fled. Just weeks later, they killed Luis Robledo and Ulpiano Ledo using the same gun and brutal methods. Their spree didn't stop. When Pardo learned that Michael Millett, a gunsmith who supplied them with silencers, was a federal informant, he lured him out and shot him with a 9mm Smith & Wesson. His body was dumped in a remote area. By April 1986, they turned on 2 women, Sarah Musa and Farah Quintero, who failed to meet expectations in a drug deal. Pardo's gun jammed during the first attack, but he fixed it and killed them both. His disregard for life was chilling. Then, on April 23, 1986, Pardo murdered his own boss, Ramon Alvaro, and his girlfriend, Daisy Ricard. After shooting Alvaro, Pardo's gun jammed again. In a panic, he smashed it into Daisy's skull before shooting her as well. Eventually, Pardo injured his foot during an altercation and fled to New York City with Garcia. A raid on Pardo's apartment uncovered incriminating evidence: murder notes, a calendar of crimes, and news clippings of his victims. He was arrested and charged with multiple murders. In court, Pardo shockingly claimed he was doing society a favor. He felt no remorse, maintaining that his actions were righteous. On April 20th, 1988, Pardo was found guilty and sentenced to death. He openly declared he would have killed more if given the chance. After decades on death row, he was executed by lethal injection on December 12, 2012, at the age of 56. In his final moments, he referenced his military service, told his daughter he loved her, and closed his eyes for the last time. But if Pardo claimed to kill for justice, the next man killed for control, a predator who wore a badge by day and became a nightmare by night. Joseph James DeAngelo, the Golden State Killer, was once a man in uniform. To his community, he was just another police officer serving in the Auburn Police Department, a law-abiding citizen, a protector. But behind the badge, DeAngelo hid a darkness so sinister it would haunt the state of California for decades. For over 10 years, he silently moved around, committing unspeakable crimes: 12 known murders, at least 51 rapes, and more than 100 burglaries. For years, no one knew it was him. In the 70s and 80s, California was paralyzed by fear. Families locked their doors and kept lights on at night, terrified of the unknown predator the media called the East Area Rapist, or EAR. He would sneak into homes under the cover of night, blind victims with flashlights, and hold them at gunpoint. He wasn't just attacking women, he forced husbands to lie face down and listen helplessly as he assaulted their wives. The attacks were calculated. The East Area Rapist was cold, clinical, and terrifyingly organized. He'd tie up the husbands and balance dishes on their backs, threatening to kill their wives if he heard even a clink. There was no pattern, no motive that detectives could trace. He would strike, disappear, and leave behind a trail of fear. Then, without warning, the attack stopped in 1986. No one knew why. Had he died, moved away, or was he hiding in plain sight? The case went cold. Years passed. Leads dried up. Then, in 2006, a true crime writer named Michelle McNamara reignited the investigation. Obsessed with justice, she launched a blog called True Crime Diary, where she connected with online sleuths and amateur investigators. She gave the monster a new name: the Golden State Killer, a name that would bring national attention to his crimes. McNamara interviewed detectives, uncovered overlooked evidence, and gathered information from multiple jurisdictions. Her passion for solving the case consumed her. But before she could finish her book, Michelle passed away unexpectedly in 2016. Her husband, comedian Patton Oswalt, helped complete and publish her book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark. At the same time, investigator Paul Holes used DNA from old rape kits and matched it to public genealogy sites. One breakthrough changed everything. A hit to a distant relative led them straight to Joseph DeAngelo. In April 2018, DeAngelo was arrested at his home. The man who had once protected the law was finally exposed as the man who'd been violating it all along. DeAngelo had been living in the same community he once terrorized, hidden in plain sight. His arrest stunned the nation. His trial may still unfold, but one truth remains. The shadow that haunted California for 44 years has finally been dragged into the light, and Joseph James DeAngelo, the Golden State Killer, will never hurt another soul again. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who seem the safest, the ones standing right beside us in uniforms we trust. These stories reveal the darkness hiding beneath the surface of those so-called heroes. What could drive someone to betray their oath, Is it anger, fear, or something even deeper? And what do you think makes someone turn into such a monster? Drop your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more shocking stories that reveal the truth behind the headlines.